Hello, hello, students. I know Nelson is joining on. Marco, thank you for setting this up. And thank you, everybody, for joining in on this presentation today. Um, I just want to preface all of this and say hello. Welcome to Worldwide College Tours. My name is Ana Luisa Teodoro. I am the International Recruitment Specialist for St. Francis College. And as we're here in the Latin American, Caribbean, and Brazil, I'll just say, Oi, hola, ¿cómo está? How is everybody doing? Also from my name, if there's some Brazilian students on the call, yes, we do speak Portuguese as well. So if you need any help, come to the booth as well. We'll talk a little bit on there. But to preface all of this, I do ask throughout this entire time, if you have questions, please write them in the chat. We'll have the floor open for Q&A at the end, but please, if you have any questions, anything that you do want to ask, this is your time as students to ask us as presenters. And I know my colleague Nelson is also going to jump in, introduce himself and his university in a few minutes. And the kind of scope of this presentation is one, going to help you all as international students with information to begin on your college search. Two, some tips and tricks that we have. And three, to also share some information from our universities. So once again, my name is Ana Luisa Teodoro from St. Francis College, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Nelson for him to introduce himself and his university as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nelson Melgar. I work for Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, Canada. So later on, I'm going to talk to you about what is Fanshawe is offering for you. So as Ana Luisa was saying, you have any questions, we have Q&As. You can see in your screen on the right side. Okay, so you just drop there your questions, and at the end, we were going to be happy to answer them. Okay, with more time to take away. So then, Ana Luisa, go for it.
Thank you very much, Nelson.
You're welcome.
So the way we're going to start this off is both Nelson and I are going to share about our university and some things like that. I'm going to start it off with one, introducing my university, but also as well some general tips and tricks and kind of things to know about the college application process. Specifically, my university, St. Francis College, is located in Brooklyn Heights, New York. I encourage every single one of you to one, not only visit my booth, but also visit Nelson's booth as well. If you have any questions, or if you're an international student interested in studying in New York City, please come to my booth. I would love to be able to help you out and share a little bit more. But once again, any questions you have, type them in the chat, and we'll cater our presentation a little bit more to answer your questions. So to start this off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go over a little bit of the presentation that I have prepared for you all, and to kind of start it off of how do I apply for school? So first things first, can everybody see this screen? Nelson, are you able to see my presentation?
Clear.
Perfect, fantastic. I think the worst thing is when I'm on a call and I think I'm sharing something to you all and then the screen is blank. So first things first, the college admissions and application process. You all, I'm assuming, are looking to try to go to school, whether it be in Canada, in the United States, or internationally. Applying for school as an international student can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So we're going to help you out to figure out what are your first steps to do so. First things first, I do want to talk a little bit about my university, St. Francis College. And again, this whole presentation is not going to be me pitching my school, but it is, I did want to share to you all just what it's like as an international student in a university where you can't visit in this particular moment. So just to reiterate, my school is a private university that's at an affordable public school cost, meaning that we value small classroom sizes, small interpersonal education. We're also based in New York City. So while we're in Brooklyn, which is a small area of the general area of New York, we do have the entire city at your disposal. Again, if you're interested in the school a bit more, I'll speak about it later, but let's get started with trying to figuring out how do you start when you're applying to schools? And Nelson, at any point, jump in with your expertise as well. You know, the students would be really, really happy and also invigorated to hear your insights of what to consider when looking at schools.
I'll do, yeah.
Perfect. So the very first thing, and again, throughout this presentation, any questions you have, students, type them in the chat. Things that I tell all of my international students, you have to consider several different price points and also several different perspectives when you're applying for school. The very first thing, location. Where do you want to go to school? Do you want to go to school, first of all, in a big city, in a classroom where you're going to be in smaller classroom sizes, bigger classroom sizes? Do you want to be in an urban environment? Do you want to be in a place that has a sprawling campus screen? Do you want to be in somewhere in the United States, in Europe, in Canada? Think location. Where do you see yourself studying? Also, what options are there available for you? As an international student, it might be a little bit hard to kind of think of different areas when you may not be familiar with the country. So how do you find schools? First thing, ask your guidance counselors. Ask guidance counselors, ask teachers at your school. What I also recommend that might be something beneficial, if there's somebody that you admire in your life, ask them where they went to school. Ask any business people that you have in your area to get some ideas. Two, location of where you see yourself, that I kind of focus on 3 different P's: personally, professionally, and I forgot my third P, but personally and professionally. What are things that you think are going to help you succeed in the future? Location also helps with opportunities, and we'll go through that in a second. Different schools in different areas also have different things that are available to you. So if you're into business, something a little bit more urban, like New York or Los Angeles, might be something that's more catered to you. If you're doing something a little bit more agriculture, something in the Midwest in the United States might be something that's geared specifically towards you. So simple Google search will help. Also on the College Board, if you want to write that word down, College Board website has a list of different schools and tips as well. And additionally, on fairs like this, have different representatives from universities internationally. So all of you on this call are taking a very good first step. Secondly, what I really like to stress for students when they're starting out, price point. And then Nelson, I'm sure you also have with your university as well with working budgets for students. I tell all of my students, have a budget that you're working with. To study internationally is expensive. It's not impossible, but you do have to have a budget that you're working with. Have a price point if you have your parents helping you out with school, if you're financing yourself, have a budget that you're working with. Also know, we'll go into scholarships a little bit more in a second. While scholarships are great, scholarships are fantastic. I wish we could give every single one of you a scholarship. Note that scholarshiping and any money that a school is giving you is to supplement your education. You should never expect that a university will pay entirely for your tuition and cost of living. So when I say to look at schools, have a budget that you're working with, that always explore scholarship opportunities. But and just in case, if you're not able to get the scholarship, maybe the scholarship amount that you were thinking you're going to get is not as high, something that's affordable within your price range for you to look at. Nelson, do you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Well, yes. You're thinking of Canada. Well, Canada doesn't offer full scholarship for international students. However, we offer partial scholarships and also work permits. So some other areas that you might consider as well.
Exactly. So everybody on this call, what I think one of the biggest takeaways that I could stress, if you take anything from this presentation, figure out how much money that you can devote to your education internationally, and take in consideration that it's not just tuition. It's tuition, room and board. Very little scholarships do cover your living expenses and where you're going to be staying at the school. Most of them cover tuition. So take that in mind. So when we're talking about price point, take in consideration tuition, living expenses in terms of dorming, housing, living expenses in terms of meal plans, also flights. You have to get to and from your home country if you're going to somewhere else internationally. And additionally, miscellaneous costs, like how much does it cost to get a visa, which we'll go into later, how much is going to cost to get your transcripts translated, things like that. So when we're talking about price point, have a working budget to help you filter out schools that are going to be good opportunities for you. And speaking of opportunities, we're going to go into what schools can offer you in internships. Another thing that I like to tell students as they're looking for schools to start into, what can a school offer you? What are internships? An internship, and I do like to kind of stress, I know some students coming in at the first time may not know some of these terms, but an internship essentially is they're typically unpaid, which kind of stinks, but they're typically unpaid experiences that you do get working practice in a field of your study. That essentially what you can add onto your resume is that you have about a year to a couple of months of experience working with something in your field to add on to before you graduate. Different schools have different connections with different areas. So for example, my university, St. Francis College, if you're a student that's interested in business, we have very, very high success rate of students that go on to pursue careers in business based on the internships that they take as undergraduate careers. So when you're looking at schools, ask. I tell everybody all the time, ask your advisors and ask the admissions counselors of the university that you're applying to, what are internships like? What is life on campus like? What are opportunities that are available for international students? Can you work on campus? Which we'll get into on the American perspective in a second. And then also the experience that you're having. What kind of school do you see yourself at? Essentially, an undergraduate career is between 4 to 5 years, typically 4. You're going to be there for a while. What kind of school do you want to be a part of? Do you want to be a part of a big school, a small school? Are you interested in Greek life, like a fraternity or a sorority? These are things to consider. And I'll pause for a second right now just to kind of let that to absorb in. Nelson, is there anything that you want to elaborate on a little bit?
No, I think I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
Okay, so these are some ideas. We'll go to scholarships very briefly, just because scholarships could be its own hour of talking about. But what I do tell students all the time is one, and this is another thing, along with price point, if you take anything away from this presentation, I do want to stress this. Always ask. Always ask if scholarships are available. Does this guarantee you're going to get it? No, but it's always good to know what options are available to you. Whatever schools that you're applying to, if you're working with an admissions counselor, if you're working with an agent, and then what an admissions counselor is essentially a person like me who is reviewing your application and helping you get into a university. Ask them what scholarshiping opportunities are available for you. Remember, they're to supplement, not entirely cover your tuition for the most part. See what options are available to you, and this is going to bring us to our next topic point of not how to get these scholarships, but things to keep in mind in the application process. Now, looking at schools. This is also goes into kind of price point and yes, be broad. Keep your options open. I recommend for students, bare minimum, apply to 3 different schools. I recommend 3 to 5. If it's over 5, okay. If it's under 3, not so great, just so you have options available to you. I think one of the saddest things, amongst all the saddest things that exist in the world, is that a student that applies for one school, thinking that, of course, I'm going to get into the school, and then they receive a rejection letter, just maybe based on criteria for that year, and then they don't have any backup schools or any other options they're considering. Don't apply just to one school. Consider what your different options are, whether they be internationally, domestically, globally, just seeing what is available to you. Also, affiliations with your high school. Your school might be affiliated with an international university, for example, or they might have an international population that's really popular. So for example, at St. Francis College, we have a very high population of Brazilian students at the school, which as an American Brazilian makes me very happy to see people from my country, but also we have a very high population of students from the Caribbean. We have a high population of students from some particular high schools in Colombia and Latin America. So consider what options that's already kind of pipelines is what we call them, that your high school is affiliated with the university. Nelson, is there anything that your university wants to speak to in terms of the international high school to college pipeline or no?
Okay, we are fine. I'm fine. Yeah,
okay.
That's okay. I'm agree.
So in terms also too, when we're looking at schools, look at programs. Different schools sometimes are known for different things. It doesn't mean that their other programs are not, and again, I like to speak broadly because I know this information can kind of apply to separate different areas, and I'll plug St. Francis in when it's necessary. But in terms of programs, different schools might be known for certain things or might have a very strong program. For example, at St. Francis College, we're very known for business. Not to say that our other programs aren't great, but a lot of our students are in business degrees. We also have a specialized nursing program. We also have a very strong political science and accounting program. Look to see when you're applying to schools if they have a particular program, if they have a particular field that they're known for, and also if it's something that matches up with your aligned for. Additionally, does that program have special requirements? We're going to go into materials in just a second, but just know when you're looking at schools, these are things to look out for and questions to ask. in regards to student aid, this is kind of where scholarship comes in. This is, and then Nelson, you can speak a little bit more to Canada, but in the United States, international students are ineligible for student aid. If you're applying for a school in the United, as a full international student, we'll go into dual citizens in just a second, but in terms of student aid of what the government can provide to help students, international students are not eligible for student aid. You are eligible for scholarships, internships, and in some cases, and we'll go into details with that, work opportunities. But federal government aid, international students are not eligible for. Nelson, do you want to speak a little bit more to how it works on the Canadian end?
Well, it's very similar. Student aid is not available for international students. However, what we call essentials help is available, like food, medication, shelter. If there is an emergency, they get that help. But not student aid per se. Scholarships, yeah, they can apply.
And I think that's also very important for you all as when you're looking at schools to see what things are available to you. Now, another thing that I would like every single one of you to keep in mind is dates and deadlines. This is very important. It's important to know when you can apply for certain things and when that cutoff point is there. Most admissions boards, once a deadline is reached in terms of an application, will not review your application if the deadline has passed. Some might, the vast majority won't. It's also important to note if the university you're applying for accepts application on something called rolling admissions. What rolling admissions means is that they accept application all throughout the year with no deadline. St. Francis College is a rolling admissions school, meaning that you can submit your application at any time during the year. The only time that dates might change is when the start of the semester. Typically, international students are only eligible to start, and this might change depending on the university you're applying for, but typically, international students are only eligible to apply in the spring or the fall term. The fall term typically starts in September, and then the spring term usually starts between January and February. Those are the two terms in which you are eligible to start as a first-time freshman. Most likely as a transfer, it's the same thing of coming into the school at that time. And then we'll go into different student types in just a second. But dates and deadlines. When can you apply for things? I recommend keeping a calendar. This is just a tip. You don't have to take it. But something when I was applying for school several years back is that I would keep a calendar of dates and deadlines for when things were due. When an application was due, when a scholarship essay was due, when there was a special presentation that would be helpful. I recommend making a calendar and keeping that up there, and then also keeping a separate sheet where you could just see all those dates and deadlines on one specific paper. Very helpful to be organized. Another small note as we're talking about materials and things like that, another small tip is that I recommend if you do not already have a professional email, create a professional email. And what do I mean by that? Some combination of your first initial and last name, whether it be at Gmail or things like that. Just a small tip as you're applying for schools when they're receiving documents. For example, let's say your name is Thomas Smith. It's more professional when receiving an application to see tsmith@gmail.com as opposed to hugs and kisses xoxo@gmail.com. And I'm sure Nelson too, in your experience as an admissions counselor, sometimes you receive applications from like a silly email once in a while.
I see this, yeah.
Exactly. So I do recommend in terms of keeping dates and deadlines, think of professionalism throughout this. And now we're going to go into materials. So when you're looking at schools, when we're kind of thinking of student life and things to be organized and that kind of access, go into materials that you need for application processes. Each school has their own different method of doing materials and applications and things that they need, but across the board, things to consider. Number one, letters of recommendation. What a letter of recommendation to is either a professor, a teacher, somebody in your life, not your friend and not your family member. Your cousin can write this. Tia Gloria cannot write you a letter of recommendation. I do say it has to be either a teacher, it should be, it could be a boss, It should not be a peer, it should not be a family member that's recommending you to apply for this school. And if you're a graduate student, we can speak to that a little bit more. Graduate students typically, I've never seen an application that doesn't require a letter of recommendation for a graduate program, but as an undergraduate student, sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. Whoever you're asking for a letter of recommendation, give them bare minimum a month in advance to write the letter. That's just a small recommendation. Also, materials needed for school might be, again, you have to check with the specific application process for your school. It might be an SAT exam, an ACT exam. You also might have to prove your level of proficiency in English in terms of a TOEFL, an IELTS, a PTE, or a Duolingo exam score. All those TOEFL, IELTS, PT, and Duolingo, what they do is to show the university that you speak English at the level that is acceptable at the university in terms of working practice. Also, if you're taking classes at an ESL school, it's typically level B2 and above. So those are just kind of exams to consider. Transcripts is a very important aspect. I cannot think of a school that does not require transcripts in order for you to apply. Something that I do ask all of the students, and again, is I recommend to get your transcripts translated. They should be in English. Nelson, you maybe speak a little bit more on your end of what you're accepting at your university, but most universities would like it to be in the functioning language of the university. So if a school is in English, it should be in English.
Yeah. So the same is in Canada. We have two official languages, English and French. If you're attending an English school, translation must be certified in English. They are going to a French school, has to be translated in French. So that's how we work.
Exactly. So just ask as well. I'm sure the admissions counselors at the schools you're applying to will tell you. Also, what it means to be evaluated. This is something that might not be mandatory across the board, but when it means something to be evaluated is one, if it's evaluated to be credible, that it's not a forged document. And secondly, it may or may not, again, ask the admissions counselors at your schools into the point system of that university. Again, just ask what's going on and your admissions counselor will tell you. The difference between an unofficial and an official transcript is generally same across the board. An official document usually comes from a guidance counselor directly to the university. An unofficial document is usually the student submitting the document directly to the university that you're applying to. Ask which ones they need. Again, all this information can be cleared up if you specifically ask. And last point that I want to stress, essays. Does the school you're applying to require an essay component? For example, at St. Francis College, we do not require an essay for you to apply to the school, but we require essays for our scholarships. Check to see when they're due. Also, small note, do not give yourself only a day to write these essays. I think it's another big thing. An college application essay, write several times over. Don't do it a day in advance. If you do, okay. But I do recommend give yourself bare minimum 2 weeks to write a college application essay. It's just helpful to not be stressful. Nelson, I'm going to check the questions that students are typing in right now. Do you have anything that you want to add as I read that?
Sure, no problem. I can go over. Okay. So for Canadian institutions, so obviously as Annalisa has mentioned, we require an official transcript from your high school. You are applying for an undergrad. As I told you, could be in English or in French, it depends. And also English proficiency test. There is many, however, due to the crisis we are living now, we are accepting the online, like Duolingo or TOEFL online also is accepted. Some programs require letters of recommendations, others don't. Some, they require essays, others don't, so you have to ask for this. Some, they require portfolio, especially the arts program, and some others, like performance arts, they require interviews, so they do video interviews. So in Canada, we don't ask for admission test. So you won't be tested, but you need to apply ahead of time. The deadline sometimes is very flexible in Canada because it's based on seats available. So that's the other thing too. It's very weird. The students need to get used to.
I was mute for a second, excuse me. And to follow up a little bit on some of the questions a student had asked, I have a student that asked letters of recommendation of how many degrees or what's the qualification for somebody submitting a letter of recommendation. There's no degree requirement for somebody to write a letter of recommendation. It's more of one, who the person who's writing it is. Like I said, it should not be a family member. It should not be a friend. What a letter of recommendation should usually come from is either, which again depends on the level of schooling you're applying for. If you're applying as a first-time freshman, meaning you're coming from high school to college, should be your teacher. Could be any teacher truly at your high school, could be your guidance counselor in your high school. It could also be from a boss, maybe you work a part-time job, things like that. It should not be a friend. It should not be somebody that's a peer that's all on the same base as you, and should not be a family member. Unless they're asking for a familial recommendation, which most of the time they don't. If you're applying for a graduate level, I do recommend that a letter of recommendation comes again from a professor, from a mentor within the field of what you're applying to. So if you're applying for a political science graduate degree program, maybe a poli-sci teacher, maybe a mentor at the school that you're working for. Usually, I would recommend at the graduate level if they're coming from a professor that you have a close relationship with. So that's the thing. I had a student asking about IB scores. Yes, for the most part, they are accepted. IB scores, if you're taking that, are accepted in terms of transcripts, in terms of exams. If you are, this is a very good question. If a student is from an English-speaking country, no. For the most part, if you come from an English-speaking country, you do not have to submit proof of English proficiency. So if you're coming from the UK, applying to a school in Canada, and again, if the school in Canada that you're applying to is an English-speaking institution and not a French-speaking institution, you don't have to prove English. If you're coming to a US university, you don't have to prove English. Additionally, if you're coming from an international high school, you may not have to prove English proficiency if your mode of instruction in that high school or in that college, if you're a transfer student, was in English. Some schools do interview processes to determine English proficiency. Throughout the board, it's more if you speak English fluently, most likely don't have to prove it. If you come from an English-speaking country, you don't have to prove it. Other than that, schools most likely will ask. That ties up a little bit on exams. And we'll open the floor again. Type your questions throughout, but we'll touch a little bit more if anybody has any questions to it, right in the chat. But for now, what we'll go into is the next portion of the presentation, which is student type. This is important for you to know coming into a university of what kind of student you are and what we mean by an international student. Specifically, what is a domestic student versus an international student? Now, the differentiating factor that I like to say with students is how you're getting into the country. What a domestic student is a student that has, one, resides in that country and has citizenship in that country, meaning that you either have Canadian citizenship if you're applying for a school in Canada, or if you have American citizenship. Or, I mean, on top of all of that, if you live in that country, that is what's considered as a domestic student. If you have dual citizenship in the US or in Canada, but you live internationally, you are still considered a domestic student, mostly because you do not require a visa to enter the country. If you are unsure about your citizenship status, ask your parents, review your documents, review your passport, just make sure. What an international student is a student that resides in another country, usually has citizenship in another country, and requires a student visa in order to study. Once again, you require a student visa in order to study. And then a third option, I didn't write here, but we'll go into it, is an undocumented student. Typically, and I don't think we really have any undocumented students on here, so I'll just kind of brief it quickly. Undocumented students are students that do not have citizenship in the country that they reside in, but they are living there and have full intention to live there, or truly that they lived there before college and they were going to live there after the university. Nelson, do you want to speak to anything in terms of those three student types for a second?
Well, domestic and international definition is fine. However, we have We don't call undocumented. They are documented, but they are not entitled to study because we have so many in process of citizenship, so they cannot apply to college yet until their situation is resolved.
And in the US, undocumented students are allowed to study at the university. Specifically, I know St. Francis College, for the most part, US universities are not required to kind of inform citizenship status. So if somebody is an undocumented student, speak it to your academic counselor, and we'll go through that process on a one-on-one basis. But for the most part, domestic versus international. International, you require a student visa to study in this country. We're going to visas in just a second. But to go over just some different student types. Freshman, what do we mean by freshman? Is somebody that has never studied at school before. Studied at a university, excuse the slip of the tongue there, but has studied from high school, and they're going from high school to college. That is a freshman, year one. What a transfer student is that you've studied at a university, whether it be a US-based institution, a Canadian-based institution, or an international institution, transferring into another school. That is a transfer. Transfer students usually have to deal with transfer credits. That's a whole nother conversation, but that's what a transfer student is. Graduate students means that you've obtained a bachelor's degree, either a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science in that regard, and you're now going to a graduate program. And an athlete, even though a student athlete can be all of these different types except for grad for the most part, I do just like to stress athletes is that in an athletic department, you combine your athletics along with school. If you are a student athlete, just note you're going to be focusing with the admissions aspect and the athletic team aspect in that regard. Know who is eligible for what. Meaning, are freshman students eligible for a specific type of scholarship? What aid is offered for graduate students? Based on your student type, different opportunities will be open and closed for you. Before we move on, Nelson, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think the definitions are very accurate. The only thing different in Canada is we don't have athletic scholarships. Is based on academic merit only.
And at US-based institutions, depending if you've been recruited, the type of sport that you're doing, athletic scholarships are available. I do recommend, if you're somebody who is interested in athletics, to come to the booths to speak to the representatives personally. I don't think this presentation might be the best time to talk about athletic scholarships just because it doesn't pertain to Canada. And also, that's a whole can of worms to open up. So we're going to go into before we open Q&A at the end, travel, visas, and COVID-19. I'm sure all of you on this call have had a very tumultuous couple of months, to say the least, in terms of online learning, figuring out what's going on with schools and your futures and your family. I do want all of you to know that us on the college end, on the faculty and admissions end, know that this is a very difficult time for you and it's very confusing. Know that we're here for you, we empathize with you, and anything that we can do, and I'm sure too that I speak for Nelson as well, your best interest is what we have in mind. And we want to make sure that you do this in a safe way, in a way that you understand what's going on, in a way that gets you to college. We want you all to study. So we're going to go over visas and travel and kind of how this all happened in light of COVID-19. And just know that all this information, for the most part, is permanent. Things change on and off in terms of entry into the country due to COVID-19. We'll talk about that in a second. For the most part, do you require a student visa? Yes. Unless you have dual citizenship, you require an F1 student visa. I'm going to repeat that again. Unless you have citizenship in the country that you are applying to study, and unless you are a domestic student, you do require an F1 student visa. You cannot study on any other visa. Nelson, is there anything you want to jump into that before we go into other visa information?
Well, in Canada, we don't have like a letters or numbers. We call just plain student visa. That's what they require to come to study in Canada, either in a college or university. So yeah, this is it. So
for Canada, just a student visa.
That's it. Yeah.
Exactly. The United States, we call them an F1 student visa. We just say F1 because that's the category that it's under, but essentially student visa. the visa process for Canada, the US might be a little bit differently. So I'll speak about the US process. Nelson, if you want to jump in and talk about the Canadian process afterwards, I think that's going to be the best to kind of give all you guys the streamline of how it works in different areas. So for the US, what it is that one, you get acceptance into a school, meaning you've submitted all the necessary materials for a school to tell you, yes, you can study here, we would love for you to study, or a rejection, which is no. After you're given that acceptance letter, what you do is that you work on something called an I-20. An I-20 is a form that shows that you have funds to support yourself or somebody who will support you in your education. This can get a little bit confusing. I don't want anybody to be too stressed out about this right now because your admissions counselor will walk you through everything, but this is just a general overview. An I-20 is just a proof of funds that you show in bank statements to say, yes, I can theoretically support myself. The only thing you're responsible for paying is tuition. Nothing on this I-20 form, you pay directly. So first things first, you get an acceptance letter. 2, you show proof of funds for the I-20. You are then given the I-20 form. And number 3, you apply for a visa interview at your local embassy. So the embassy that you are going to, where you do your passports and things like that, is where you go to apply for a visa interview. You interview for the visa. Hopefully, if your embassies are open, you're given a student visa, and then you're eligible to come study here in the United States. That is the general process. We'll go over a little bit with caveats with COVID-19, but Nelson, do you want to speak about the Canadian process a bit?
Sure. To apply for a Canadian institutions, first of all, you need to get a letter of admission from the institution, like a college. And from there, the second step, you apply for a Canadian visa. Obviously, the Canadian visa, you need to answer 5 questions in general. What are you going to do in Canada? Where are you going to live? Where are you going to study? How much money you have for this? And if you are going to be back in the country, or what are you going to do when you finish? So all that is presented to the Canadian Embassy in your country or in your region. Everything is done online. It takes from, well, 3 weeks to 6 weeks, and with COVID, probably 6 months, though it's taking so long. Okay, so that is how thing works. Once you get the Canadian visa also has work permit to come to work at Canada as well. So you study and you can work. And also it has another component, is what is called, what we call residency. It has another code for residency. When you finish and you study your studies here and you work, you can also apply to become a Canadian resident. So that is also another plus. That is why many people think that the Canadian visa are difficult, because all these 3 codes, so their assessment is very complex. And then the third step is the transfer, how you're gonna come to Canada. So yeah, we take it from there.
Perfect. And before I open the floor for Nelson to talk about his university a little bit more, we'll go over travel for what it's like in both nations. Check to see travel restrictions that are going on in your country. Note that depending on the school that you're applying for, they may have options for you to study online if you're unable to come study in person. The way you book a visa interview is you check to see if your embassy is open. If they're open, you schedule a visa interview for you to do so. We're expecting, at least from the US end, for more visa interviews and embassies to open up within the coming months. Also see if when you're traveling into the country, regardless if it's Canada or the US, if you're required to do a quarantine upon entry. Those are just some caveats in terms of COVID-19. And on this end, I'll wrap up a little bit, have Nelson speak about his university a bit more, things that he wants to share. Then at the end, we're going to open the floor for Q&A and answer all the fantastic questions that you all are typing in. Also, small note, my contact information. Any of you come to my booth later on, my name is Ana Luisa Teodoro. If you have any questions, comments, come visit St. Francis College. Love to speak to you then. Nelson, the floor is yours to talk about your university before we open up for Q&A.
Okay, perfect. Great information. Thanks, Ana Luisa. So now we're going to talk about Fanshawe College. This is an institution in Canada. So mostly what you heard from Ana Luisa is very similar, the process in Canada as well. So that's what we are going to talk today. I have a lot of pictures, so you it's mostly picture what I have for you. As you heard, we were talking about COVID and what we know right now. Well, Canada also has been affected by this pandemic, as everybody knows. However, we are offering online programs and also blended. Even though the campus is open, it's just only for the practical piece. However, admissions are still open for all this year. We have 3 admissions, January, May, and September. As you mentioned, as Ana Luisa mentioned it. Also, they have 2, we have 3 admissions. Well, we are located in Canada. As you know, Canada is one of the biggest countries in the world. And our capital city is Ottawa. This is the city where we are located in London, Ontario, Canada. We say London, Ontario, Canada is for one reason. It's because many people think that we are in England. No, it's called London because the English settlers, they built the city and then they obviously put that name, English name, London. But we are in London, Ontario. We are south of Toronto, north of Detroit. It's very close to the border from US and also 2 hours to New York border. So we are very close to the other institution. We are neighbors, okay? This is an industrial city, okay? Here, what we do is we build cars. And this is mostly how it looked like. It's very safe city, very, I will say, calm and relaxed, very organized, very clean. And also it's called the forest city because there is so many park and so many green areas that you can see it here. This is downtown. So it looks very nice. Also, we have a very developed communication system, transportation, international airport, train, buses, beautiful highways around, and very organized also events. This is the city, even though it's a middle-sized city, we have so many events. And then in the summer, obviously international students are participants of them. So this is our campus, one of them. This is an institution from the government of Canada. This is a public institution. Just for you to know, in Canada, 95% of the higher education institution, in fact, the education belongs to the government. And the government has all the projection for employability and stuff like that. This one was built like 50 years ago. This one has 30 buildings and 21,000 students in general. Yeah, almost 7,500 international from 104 countries. This is what we call main campus, and also we call it kind of community campus because everything is there. We have 9 campuses in the area, as you can see. This is based on employability. So there is 6 campuses in the city and there is 3 more outside. Just for your information, this is a transportation technology campus. Actually, in short, this is automotive, diesel, body shop, industrial machinery, agricultural machinery technicians, all of that is prepared here. This is the downtown campus. We call the hospitality. All the hospitality careers are here: hotel, culinary, pastry, special events, administration of hotel resources are here. And this is the School of Digital and Performing Arts. This is where all the digital design is. We can say like graphic design, visualization, 3D, special effects, game design. All of this is offered from here, and also theater. We have theater performance and theater like a production. So also it's available for students. And this is our aviation center. We offer aviation program. As you can see here, it is over 24 airplanes, 4 helicopters, 4 training. We offer to become maintenance engineers, either for avionics or for aircraft maintenance. But also we train commercial and private pilots as well, and also for people who are studying or they graduate in kind of mechanical engineering and they would like to work in aerospace. Also, we train for aerospace manufacturing. All of that from this campus. This is our newest campus. This is the London South campus. It's mostly for business, mostly for postgrad in business. So we offer over a 50 postgraduate program, 1 or 2 years program. And then also there are regional campuses and in like Simcoe and Thomas and Woodstock, and they are branches from Fanshawe College with the same philosophy. One of the things that you might see, what is the difference? Somebody asked, what is the difference between university and colleges? Well, in Canada, colleges are very project-based learning, okay, in class and taking away homework, online classes. Now we are offering, due to the pandemic, as many online classes. The professors are industrial professionals. And also the programs development, the industry is involved in planning. So one thing you need to know in college is theory and practice. Here in Canada, we assume saying is 5 hours theory, 5 hours practice every day. So Monday through Friday, you're gonna be very busy. And also the other thing in colleges, there is a lot of labs because it's theory and practice. As you can see here for the media, we have 4 radio stations. They are commercial radio stations where the students work. We have a television studio, simulation labs, an hangar with 24 airplanes, and all these are hands-on. So it's 5 hours theory and 5 hours practice. As you can see here are the labs that you can participate. This is what we call Fanshawe has been doing well in those surveys about what we talk about the experience that they have in campus, and we are doing good. The admission process, as Ana Luisa was saying, varies from institution to institution. So here we ask for high school English, probably you will need a letter of recommendation and probably a portfolio and an interview. There is not admission test, and this is more or less a guide. Is not exactly what happened, but we have what we call educational agents around the world. They help you with this process. Once you get the letter of admission, you need to pay a deposit, and then we are accepting Duolingo, and then we provide you with the conditional or with unconditional offers letter that you've been accepted. This process here at Fanshawe is very quick. 1 week or 2 weeks, you can get an answer from us. And this is the other thing that is very popular in Canada is the work-study process. If you study at Fanshawe full-time, you get a work permit for 20 hours per week, okay? If you're studying a career or post-degree program. And also we have different areas where you can do practical job in the community. Either it's called internship, we call placement, we call clinical practice, but also we call co-op. The co-op is a paid work experience. When you are students, when you are placed in a company and then you go to work there and then you get paid, but also you get taught and supervised. This is one of the best processes here for the employability for the students. When you graduate, also you can stay in Canada for 3 more years under postgrad work permit. The PGWP, that's what it's called, is postgrad work permit. So that is also very attractive benefit for international students, because then you don't get just a degree in theory, but also you have the opportunity to make some money. Okay, so basically to recuperate your money. Okay, so and then we have another service for the student. This is Fanshawe Care. This is, we can say, customer service. What happening here is we try to help the students to arrive. We have a greeting program. We pick you up from the airport, we bring you over the city. If you need accommodation, we can provide it, a couple nights accommodation as well, and we help you to get settled down in the city of London, Ontario. This is service for a student. There is no charge for this. And also we have another program. It's called Fanshawe Works. Fanshawe Works is basically a program that we teach students, international students, how to find a job in Canada. It's not the same way you apply for a job in your country as you apply in Canada. First of all, the resume or curriculum vitae or hoja de vida, whatever it's called, is not the same. Okay, it's totally different. The employment here is a little bit different. So we train you how to get a job. And this is also a complimentary service. You don't need to pay for this, but it's very useful tool and it's free of charge. So this is more or less how the workshop looks like. Okay, this is talking about international costs. You heard in the presentation before me is you need to budget what is the cost. First of all, this is in Canadian dollars. A Canadian dollar is 25% cheaper than American dollars. So we are talking here about 15,000 US dollars per year. Okay, and this is books and expenses, and this is living expenses. Okay, so this is an average. The good thing is all the careers we offer, they cost the same, and these are all included: healthcare, bus pass, Fanshawe care advisor, computers, student services, wellness center, including the gym. All of them are included in your fee. The only thing you need to be aware of is room and board, like a residence and food is not included. However, is a budget of $10,000 here per year. Okay, that is more or less. Okay, accommodation, we have many different accommodation. Inside campus, we have residents that you can live in, and also with a meal plan. Also, we have a homestay, living with family. Also, we have off campuses, we have a private residence, independent living. So you can also rent a room or you can rent an apartment. We help you with that. Okay. We don't find a place for you, but when you find a place, we give you addresses, internet, site. So we recommend you what will be the best. A scholarship, as I told you, we offer for international students what we call partial scholarships. You apply, many of them you apply the first week of classes. Once you are in Canada, then we can talk about the scholarships. And this is basically what it is. Our media, you can connect with us. The other thing is, as we were explaining about the visa process, is very similar. So you apply first for the college, and then you get the letter of admission, you pay your deposit, and then you apply for the Canadian visa, and then you are ready to travel. And then we recommend the students to travel 2 weeks before coming to Canada. Right now, due to the situation we are living, we expect the students to do quarantine. I heard Ana Luisa talking about the quarantine. It's 14 days that you need to quarantine once you come to Canada. And then after quarantine, so then you can attend classes. So now you can come 2 weeks before because you need to be in quarantine, okay? And then we support you during the process. We call you, we send you videos, we send you conference, we talk to you, okay? So that is the idea, to keep you entertained, okay? So, and then when you are ready, we send you for the COVID tests for free, okay? One thing I want to tell you is when you come here, you come with a health insurance already. So you are kind of all set. Okay, so that's how we do it. Well, we are open for business, basically. So our campuses are open for students who come to do their practical thing. Due to the restrictions on the pandemic, so we are accepting just 10 students per labs. It's just to keep the social distance. You know, the thing that is recommended at your home country, also here, okay, just cover your mouth and nose, and wear a mask, wash your hands, keep the social distance, and then be at home. That's how we do it, okay? So if you have any question, we will be happy to answer. If not, we are in our booth, in our electronic booth, so you can check it us, and if you have any question, feel free. Okay, so here we are, and that's it for me. You have any question? We have like 7 minutes, okay? So you can answer all the questions you have, and then we'll be happy. Perfect, yeah.
Thank you very much, Nelson. I think everybody on this call, if you're interested in studying Canada, by all means, please check out Nelson's University, go to their booth. We're going to be here throughout the day, thinking of being there and helping you answer all these questions and things that you have. I do see some questions coming in about just specific things about College Board, of how to register the school. If the school is not on the College Board website, I do recommend going on to the university's page. They do have an application. Most universities do have a way to apply directly on the school's website if you're not applying through College Board. If not, I would recommend reaching out to your guidance counselors at your school itself. They will let you know how to do everything with College Board in that regard. Is there any other? I know that we have a few minutes left, like Nelson said, to open up the floor for questions and things like that. I'm seeing some students from the Caribbean ask about CAPE, CSEC, and CXC scores. Those are proofs of graduations from your high school and are acceptable. You don't have to take anything else unless the school that you're applying to does have a mandatory requirement for an SAT or ACT or an external exam. CSEC, CAPE, and CXC scores are completely acceptable across the board because it's what your high schools and what your high schools are using to show that you have graduated. So those are completely acceptable. There was one other student that had a note about IGCSE. I know St. Francis College and US-based institutions accept those. We also accept ECTS scores, so the European credit transfer, those European credits as well. Nelson, on your end and the Canadian end, are those credits and scores acceptable?
No. So no. What happened is mostly what we ask is for high school, and then we do our assessment process, and then that's basically what it is. What happened is not every single student, they have taken SATs or any other credentials. So we don't want to be different. So we treat them in the same way. All of them, they have applied with high school. Either they have IB or they have even grade 11 from some countries like Colombia, we accept them. I know there is some others that they do 2 years of high school and then we accept them. Others, they do 5 years of high school, we accept them. So we don't have like a that differentiation. Everybody is equal, and everybody, we give them an opportunity, and that's how we do it. The only thing we don't give any exception is for the English proficiency. Everybody who's come from a country where the English is not the first language, they must demonstrate their English skills by a test. If they don't have it in time of no COVID, we test them in campus, okay? But due to the whole pandemic, we cannot test them in campus, so they need to bring Duolingo or TOEFL online, something like that.
Also, a small note, I know on the St. Francis College end and US-based institutions, we do have several options for online learning if you're unable to get your visa. And additionally, I do want to stress in the US too, international students are eligible to apply for something called OPT. I know Nelson had spoke a little bit about how on the Canadian end, how working after graduating is an option. It's also an option for US-based institutions as well. It's not 3 years, it's 1 year though, but you can also extend it later on with other forms of study. I see that we have a few more questions coming in. Coming into SAT mandatory for St. Francis College. No, we're SAT optional, meaning that we do not require an SAT score. And then Nelson, you can also speak to a little bit about extracurriculars, about presenting to colleges in that application end. I know on a US end, whatever you have. I tell all my students, whatever you have, whatever you're good at, to kind of put that
in Canada is kind of different. My rule is apply 10 to 12 months in advance, because in Canada we accept only 20 students per group. Once is full the program, that's it.
Perfect. And then also one other small question. Can you hear us, Nelson?
Hello.
Oh, hold on, Nelson. We can hear you, but it cut off a little bit. One of the perks of being on Zoom, everybody. As Nelson reconnects really quickly, I see we have one more question about a student in Bolivia about asking how to present transcripts. I do recommend whenever you're submitting transcripts, whether it's from another university or if it's from a high school, if it's coming from a university, have the university submit them to you so you can get them translated and evaluated into English. All transcripts should be in the working language of the university you're applying to. So I recommend that you do that, and then you can submit it to the admissions board. I think Nelson had a little bit of trouble with his internet connection, but I also know we're wrapping up. So I'll end it off for everybody, and hopefully Nelson can come in to say goodbye. I know he was very, very excited to also share a little bit about Fanshawe University in Canada. I highly recommend you go visit his booth if you are interested in studying school in Canada. If you are interested in studying in New York, please come visit me, Anna Louisa Teodoro at St. Francis College. I want to thank Worldwide College Tours. Thank you, Marco. Always a pleasure working with you and setting this up. Students, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your effort. Please come speak to us at our booths if you have any questions. I wish you to stay safe, stay well, and wish you the best of luck in your college application process. If you have any questions, come visit our booth. I would love to speak to you. And I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, regardless of what corner of the world that you're in. Nelson, excuse me, not Nelson, Marco, anything else that you want to end on the Worldwide College Tours end?
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Anna. This was great. I don't know what happened to Nelson, but it's about time to pack up anyway, so fine.
Wrapping up, I see that we have a few more questions coming in. I recommend coming to our booths as this presentation section's kind of wrapping up, and I know that we have other ones throughout the day. So I hope everybody stays well, stay safe, and good luck, and hope to see you in either the virtual or in-person campus. So goodbye, everybody. Well, I'm thinking of the languages that we have working here. We have bye of the Caribbean, ciao, and adios. So wish everybody the best of luck.